Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special Friday night show with Greg, maybe Alan. He's having some trouble joining on, but he's in the comments. We have Gareth all the way from London, and we got Flo. And I don't remember where you're from, Flo.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And MJ, also from Pennsylvania. Are you Ohio?
No, I'm Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I should probably correct you and say I'm from Portsmouth as well, not London.
Okay.
But carry on.
And tonight, we are going to be discussing 1984. And now, this is my fifth time reading the book. I read it in the 80s on a paperback. And then again in the 90s, it was my first ever audio book on cassette tape. And then I read it as an audiobook, and then another audio. This is my fifth time.
Wow.
So, yeah, I guess I like the book a little bit to read it, but that's over 4 decades, so. And Gareth, what about you?
I read it at school, so I would have been about 13 when I first read it, like being forced to read it in English class. And I found it very hard, but I did definitely admire it when I first read it. And then I read it again a few years after leaving school. And now I'm really old. I've read it again, third time. I'm in my 50s, so that was a lifetime ago.
Yeah. What about you, Flo?
I read it for the first time last summer. 51 would be the age. And then I read it again this summer, 52.
Okay. And you did not like it that much?
Not at all.
Okay. We'll get into that because I think that'll add some perspective. And MJ?
I've always wanted to read this book. I was really disappointed when my literature class did not read it when I was in high school. I started it yesterday. I finished it today. First time reading it.
Cool. All right. Okay. Well, this is not going to be a normal live. We're going to try to keep on subject. We've got some people in the comments saying hi to each other. I'm not going to be reading out the comments as much, saying hi to each other. So I'm not ignoring the people in the comments. I'm just saying I'll mention that Alan, as I said, having trouble with his connectivity. That's why you're not seeing him here. But he is in the comments. And we have a couple other people in the comments. We have Read by Fred, who is part of our Boxer reading group on 1984.
Hi, Fred. Yeah, he said some really good things.
Yeah. So, you can add the people watching can add comments or ask us what we thought about something, and we'll try to answer it. But they said I'm gonna not respond to the comments like you're saying hello. And now I know Bad is Rad is also part of our, and she's in here. So hello everyone. So general things is like I liked it, Gareth liked it, MJ, you kind of liked it, and now the thing is it's a rough book. It's not like we were talking with Gareth. It's not a fun book to read because it's not pleasurable. It's Orwell pointing out the flaws of his time and what he thinks was an extreme danger growing up. And because I said it's like he could see the Soviet Union for what it was in the 40s when he wrote this. And I remember that because a lot of the authors before World War II were sort of communists. They really thought communism was going to be the good solution. And one of the books is like Native Son by Richard Wright, where they had and he wrote about them very favorably. But by the time Orwell came around to write this book, Richard Wright was going, maybe I was wrong about communism, that they really are that bad. So
it's not just that. He also, remember, it wasn't that long after he fought in the Spanish Civil War against the fascists as well.
Right.
So the 30s was a decade of extremes, and you're right, communism was getting more popular, but there were 3 fascists in power, 3 different European countries as well. So you can't ignore that. So you're right that there was definitely a rise in popularity of communism in the 20s and 30s a little bit, but definitely I think he's reacting more to the fascist dictators and Stalin, because he had already written about Stalin, because he'd written Animal Farm.
Yeah, this is like a direct response to Stalin and the Soviet Union. And I often thought, is this a propaganda novel? He's deliberately writing to push a point to people.
It's a political novel. I think if you say propaganda, that sounds a bit dismissive, doesn't it? Because it's a negative word.
It is, but I just read a propaganda novel by John Steinbeck this week. The Moon is Down, and that's sort of like I'm thinking, okay, he deliberately wrote it as propaganda. That's, but I was thinking is how much of this was Orwell? Maybe propaganda is too strong of a word.
It's definitely a political statement,
yes.
But he was writing a story as well. I mean, he wouldn't have put all the stuff about Julia in it if he wasn't trying to write a story. So I think that changes from just a what do you call it? A manifesto,
But he's still an artist, and it's still John Steinbeck did his Moon is Down propaganda, and it worked okay as a novel, but you can still see the propaganda. So how do you think it rates as just a novel? I mean, you've essentially got the Winston Smith and Julia. I don't think we ever learned Julia's last name, do we?
I don't think
No.
so.
Okay.
I don't recall that at all.
No.
Now, I've seen some criticism say that they thought he couldn't write Julia very well. That's one of the flaws of the book, that she's not written very well, and it could be indicative of the fact that we don't know her surname.
It's also you never get her perspective in the story. It's always other people observing Julia. It's always Winston Smith encounters with Julia. You never get her.
But isn't that also that it's always Winston's perspective on everything anyway, isn't it? For the whole book, isn't it?
I believe
Never
so. I
goes away
don't think you get who's the guy? O'Brien. You never get into his.
No, it's always O'Brien is from Winston's perspective, isn't it?
For all purposes, it's like a first-person book.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting, because my question is, with the double think or the double thought, and the whole trusting of, you're being controlled, you're being told what you can think and what you have to believe in. And right from the get-go, he didn't like Julia. And she ended up technically being on his side and wanting to protest the thought police. But the person that he did trust, O'Brien, was essentially the traitor.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I found that to be extremely interesting.
It just says that Winston Smith is not a good judge of character.
No.
I mean, I know Alan brought this up in a Voxer group. And I brought it up. It was like, were Winston and Julia really in love? Did they really have a love relationship? Or were they so oppressed and so isolated that the humans need some sort of person to attach themselves to? Whether it's a friend, spouse, or even a pet. I mean, you want someone to acknowledge you as a person. And in that society, no one will acknowledge you as a person.
Right. And what's the best way to acknowledge someone than passing a note saying that I love you? Like, just,
Yeah, that no, because obviously she had to be pretty quick and she had to have a lot of impact straight away, because obviously they couldn't have too much doubt as to what they were saying. And those 3 words are going to get his attention. Yep. So if those 2 characters were desperate for physical contact, and there was something about the way they were looking at each other that they thought there was a bit of rebellion in there was a bit of unsurety, that there was something about the way they were carrying themselves. That you know, I think it's in the text that he thinks she's not quite okay about what's happening, and she thinks the same thing about him. And I think that was the spark that made her give him the note. And I think the note is there because it had to be something really quick and obvious.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't sit and chat for ages, you know. But I think it was a need for physical contact rather than a romantic love story. I don't think it's a romantic love story.
It was the need just to say, I don't like Big Brother. I do not like the society, and I can't admit it to anyone. But here you hear someone I can admit it to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's, go ahead, Foss.
I think it's a great sense of loneliness. And when you have a group of people, you kind of search out for that face in the crowd, that one person that you might relate to or might feel like, you know, I don't know, somebody you can connect with. And although it said he hated her because he found her attractive, right off the bat, that tells me that at that moment it was a lust. But I think on Julia's part, I think she really, really did love him. I think you would have to, being told the things that he told her, pertaining to how he hated her. He was very honest with his feelings and how he felt about her. And she still chose to continue that relationship. So I think on her part, it was a love. And on his part, it was maybe a love to hate until he got to know her. And then he found in her someone that he could connect with. I think, like you said, a bad judge of character. He judged her incorrectly at first.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I think a lot of it's the desperation of the situation, you know, that it's so bleak. And I think that's where a lot of their motivations are coming from.
Yeah. And I think it's two people that are just longing for a connection, just to have a connection.
And you don't see real connections, or Winston did not receive real connections in the outside world. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's like the family with the kids and the spies running around the spy, and the parents are going like, "Oh, you're such a good child. You're routing out the spies for us." And you have to wonder what those people were thinking in their relationship with each other. And
well, that could go back to the relationship that Winston had with his mother and his sister. That was not a good relationship. I thought he was a horrible person.
Yeah, but how much of that horrible person is the situation that they find themselves in? How do you be a good person in that society? I mean, how do you form a real relationship with someone? I mean,
okay. So I guess what I'm referring to is the food rations, how there was never enough in the household. And the mom knew that, and she was willing to forego what she had to in order to see that her children ate. But he was like extremely narcissistic, and he was like not compassionate towards, like not saying, well, we're all in this together. No, he was all about himself, and he was perfectly okay seeing them do without so that he could have.
Yeah,
that's a horrible person.
I don't disagree.
He's definitely a flawed character, isn't he? He's definitely a flawed character.
Right.
Absolutely.
But also,
and I don't think she brought him up to be that way. That was just his true self coming out. I'm sure the mom was frustrated, but she was still compassionate enough to do the right thing and share. And he, like with the candy bar, how he demanded like his sister have none. Do you recall that part?
I do. I did not. it was not something that struck me the way it's striking you. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I was reading it, it just kept reinforcing for me the bleakness of the situation. The fact that he was so greedy and as you say, selfish was
Yeah.
what society was forcing him to be like. So I wasn't like damning him for it. I was damning the situation more.
I was trying to get into his mind and like see what was making him tick. And then if we like jump, that was like the middle, this part 2. So if we jump all the way to the end where O'Brien has betrayed him and he is being forced to face his worst fear, which was the rats in the cage. He was still rebellious at a certain point, and he definitely like betrayed Julia. Well, they say she betrayed him too, but were they specific on how she betrayed him?
No.
I only seem to recall how he betrayed her. And then, O'Brien was like, take them to room 101 where the rats were, right? So when a person is faced with that kind of situation, you know what? I'm going to say whatever it is you want me to say to avoid injury to myself. And he was like very rebellious and not saying what he should. He was still stating his beliefs, which were totally different than the thought police. And it caused him to rethink that, only to have to give in to their way of thinking. In the, you know what I'm saying? In the end, he gave in to that.
So go ahead. So,
what was that?
Well, when I was rereading this, when they put him in room 101, they showed him the rats. He, of course, immediately said, "Do this to Julia."
Yeah.
And then you jump to the last chapter, which I think is one of the most brilliant chapters in literature, where he's sitting in the cafe. He still has these rebellious thoughts, but he knows he's never going to do anything with them.
Yeah.
He's still thinking, okay, I betrayed, I can be a good citizen. But it's at the very end when they announce this huge win in battle, that it was he's expecting a loss. And he runs out and he has like this epiphany. I love Big Brother.
Mm-hmm.
And
but he also says in that bit he can't wait to die as well, doesn't he?
He does, but that was before the last epiphany. And that's what's, I think O'Brien knew that when you torture someone, you will confess. You will comply. But what Orwell is saying is you will not only comply, you will eventually capitulate.
Mm-hmm.
If you were forced and you were so downtrodden, you will become that person who does love Big Brother. Because I think at the very end,
it's the last line of the book, isn't it?
What? He did.
It's the last line of the book.
He loved Big Brother.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was the most devastating part.
I think the line before it is even more powerful when he says, it says he had won the victory over himself. So just before it says he loved Big Brother, it says he had won the victory over himself. So it was like all of these instincts he had to know that it was wrong and to be rebellious had been stamped on for good. And that was a victory.
It's okay. Or like that's the power. It's like you eventually will be crushed.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point of the book.
Yeah.
And that was the point of room 101 as well. Because obviously Flo's saying that, he really kind of stayed rebellious right up until room 101. But that's the point of room 101, that nobody gets past that point.
Right.
Right. You completely lose your identity. He lost his identity at the end of the book.
Yeah. And that everyone is going to have a room 101.
Mm-hmm.
That there's something that you just cannot tolerate.
For me, it'd be running out of biscuits.
What?
I said it'd be running out of biscuits for me. Sorry, that's a silly point.
I won't even say what mine is because who knows who's watching.
That's mysterious. You have to put it in the Voxer chat.
Mm.
Oh, who knows who's watching Voxer? Yeah, but no, that's. And like I said, we don't know. So we talk about the relevance of the characters, but do you think this is still sort of like a valid novel? That,
Yeah.
that I see lots of parallels today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And especially, I would say, the cult of a leader.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
people
Cult of personality being like part of politics now. Yeah.
definitely. And
It's
my
definitely
question,
more.
my question is, how many people really do love Big Brother who have not been tortured? Are there people who really do believe that this form of society is the best form of society?
Yes, I believe that. I
I think that's true. I see it today with people who follow leaders who are not really doing anything in their interest, and they will proclaim this leader the best person who's ever served in our government. I'm going like, really?
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, obviously, a big point of the book is about lack of civil liberties, because it's all about this totalitarian regime. And, Britain and America and Europe aren't full of totalitarian regimes now at the moment, which is nice. But there are moments when legislation is brought out to reduce civil liberties, and there is definitely a surveillance thing going on, and you get tracked about where you are and what you're watching and what your emails are saying, all that sort of stuff. That's definitely been tracked. So there is that surveillance element. That's definitely a big part of Big Brother is watching you kind of thing. So I do think that's true.
She's watching me.
Mhm.
She's listening
Yeah.
to everything I say.
Yeah. I mean, I've got Alexas in 3 rooms. Alexa.
I'm worried mine's going to go off.
She just said, I don't know that. And what cracks me up is that obviously when they came out, everyone was like, well, this is surveillance. This is crazy. Listen to our conversations. And their defense was, no, she only starts listening when you say her name. It's like, what? That doesn't make sense. How does she know if you've said her name unless she's listening?
They are listening. Sometimes they just speak without being invoked.
Well, yeah. But they won't know if they're being invoked unless they're listening. So it doesn't make sense.
No, it isn't. I mean,
Alexa, are you listening?
Designed to protect your privacy, so by default, I record audio.
So I set off everyone's Alexas in the everyone's watching. She just gave me some serious kind of nonsense.
it is.
Yeah, whatever. I know you are.
They are, because here's a story. The other day I was folding clothes and I took everything off only to refold and decide what I was keeping, what I was getting rid of. And there was a shirt that I came across and I was like, where did I get this? I didn't even know I had it. And so I folded it and I put it on the shelf. And then a couple of days later, I thought, well, let me wear that. So I put it on and my father came to see me. And the first thing he said was, nice t-shirt. And I said, well, do you want one? And he looked at me. I go, well, we can make that happen. Do you want one? Just tell me what your size is. So he's like, yeah, okay, I'll take one. I could not think where I got this t-shirt from for the life of me. And I always have my phone by me. Where did I get this t-shirt? Where did I get this t-shirt? I texted my sister, do you know where? Blah, blah, blah. Within the hour, the business that I bought that t-shirt appeared on my phone.
Yeah. So,
That's scary.
it is scary. Now, we have a few questions in the comments for people.
There we go.
So, again, I'm skipping all the hellos, so I'm not really ignoring you. It's just we're trying to keep this focused. Here's read by Fred. MJ, as a first-time reader of 1984, did it depress you? Did it grip you? Did it take you a bit of time to let it sink in after reading it?
So I'm going to say that it did not depress me because I already had a little bit of a preconception as to what the book was about. The one thing that always kept flashing in my head, Greg, and I know you'll remember, Gareth probably, Flo probably, are the Apple commercials from the late 80s, where it was Big Brother and the commercial was very Big Brother like. So that's the narrative that kind of had going in my head when I was reading the book. So it did not depress me. I've read books that are way more depressing. So no, because I was in that frame of mind already. Did it grip me? Absolutely. I read the sucker in 2 days. So did it take time to let it sink in after reading it? It's still with me. I'm still thinking about it. So maybe in a week or two, ask me again. And, it might be one of these books that just keeps popping in my head that makes me want to go back for another reread. But absolutely, I enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars.
Well, that's really why I've read it 5 times in my life over the decades, because I keep going back to it, and I keep seeing new things every time I pick it up. Like this time we've discussed a little. It's like I never really understood the cult of Big Brother until events in the United States just said people really will follow a leader who does not have their interests at heart.
We've both had that. You guys have had Donald Trump, and we've had Nigel Farage that stirred up all sorts of things through a cult of personality. It's definitely no one had heard of him before he started talking about something that no one knew anything about. And then because of the way he spoke, everyone was like, "Oh my God, I feel really strongly about this," and they hadn't even thought about it before. So I think there's definitely a lot of weight to it, and I think Orwell was really forward thinking on that.
Yeah.
So there's a picture. I don't know if any of you've seen it. So they said that he wrote this book based on what he knew about Nazi Germany in the 40s. That was really all he knew about totalitarianism. So there is a picture out there that reminds me of Mr. Smith. There, when Hitler was giving those speeches, and it said that he was a great orator. So he got the masses to think and see things his way. And there's this one lone person in that mass that is not doing that Nazi stuff.
I know that picture.
Yeah.
I believe that man had a rough time in life after that, if I remember correctly.
Well, I had quite a lot of, because I did my degree in history, I had quite a lot of books about that. And one of the covers that I thought was really powerful on Nazi Germany was this, was the Sieg Heil kind of crowd. And the one that the picture was focused on was this woman that was doing this sign, and she was crying her eyes out while she was doing it. And I thought that was a really powerful picture. But the thing about Nazi Germany is there was 2 things. One, that it happened very slowly. So Hitler did what he was doing through the 30s. So it started in 1932, maybe 1933, what he was doing. And it was very clever. And the other thing that is really crucial to the whole thing as well is Germany was decimated by the deal that they made after the First World War. And they were desperate. They were starving. Their conditions were really, really shitty. So for Hitler to come along and go, "I'm going to fix all this," they were like, "Oh my God, someone's going to fix this awful state we're in." So those 2 things are so important in understanding how Hitler happened. He was very clever, and he did these things slowly. So everyone's going, well, because I've just reread Maus, and the thing about Maus is there's loads of moments where they're saying, where the Jewish people are saying, "Is this right? If what we're hearing rumors about this is happening, is this right?" And nobody really kind of only half believed it because it was so strange what they were hearing about what they were doing to the Jews. And that kind of thing is part of the picture as well. But he was being influenced by Franco in Spain as well. And obviously you had Mussolini as well. But I think because he fought against Franco in the Spanish Civil War, that had a big influence on him.
Yeah. I'm trying to pick out the questions for us. Again, read by Fred. Greg, did you actually read it 5 times over your life?
You don't believe you?
I read it paperback, audio, digital, audio, and digital. So, and what was your reaction on each reread? Well, the first time I read it was just like, wow, what a book. And the other times, I don't think I've had a big of a change because our political economy was pretty much holding together those 3 times in between. It's this last time that I can really see how this world could come to the Western civilization. I mean, it's not just some, oh yeah, he was talking about how bad it was back then. It could happen today. Because I think, Gareth, it was you in the Voxer, that there are some people who are willing to accept authoritarian regimes to avoid the things they don't like in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I just see that, especially like in Florida, the things that are happening down in Florida are just flabbergasting. Now, does everyone know, like, I know Alan would bring this up, like the teaching of slavery has been changed.
Yeah.
Where they say, well, you could learn good things as a slave.
Yeah, I imagine. That's probably been happening all over, isn't it? Like since has there? I don't know, but hasn't there always been a resistance against that? That's saying that they're trying to rewrite history. No, was that just a recent thing? I don't know.
This is the most recent iteration of that one. I mean, it's always, some people are trying to like push it aside. I know that Texas wants to change textbooks when they talk about slavery, not mention the word slavery. They want to use involuntary relocation.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we've got a narrative over here where it was the British Empire was seen as a wholly productive, wonderful, celebratory thing for decades and decades and decades, and then education's kind of changed it a bit. It's still seen as it's not celebrating the same way. You don't have Empire Day anymore, but I'd say in education it's still not really kind of looked at properly. The Liverpool and Manchester and London got rich over slavery, and that's a big part of our history. But that's still not properly addressed in education.
Yeah, I mean, the British Empire, is, like you said, not the best part of history. It's like, every country, I think, has its flaws, but people try to cover them up. Not quite the way they do it. It's not like you can just rewrite history like in Winston Smith, like going back and say, oh no, we'll just change it so these people were never really there.
But that element of the book is so crucial, isn't it? Because that whole point is that what he's doing is, when he's rewriting history, he's saying that what we now say is the past is a fact now. We've changed it, and these are the facts. This is the past. And that, like we're kind of implying here anyway, that can happen so easily. There are loads of people that are denying the Holocaust happened. There are loads of people trying to rewrite history, and loads of people that have rewritten history anyway, like we were saying, anyway. And it is so easy to do, because ultimately, if you've got the power to put the information out there, then the public are powerless to, where are they getting their information from? If that's where they're getting their information, then that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, the idea is that you can pick and choose your facts.
Yeah.
That you want to express.
And facts are so fluid now. I mean, that's one of the things that Trump succeeded in doing, massively confusing people about what was fact and what wasn't fact. What was the phrase there?
In the book, it's very cut and dry. They are rewriting history to suit their needs. In our history, if we look back to Christopher Columbus, how that is debated. Did he really discover America? Did he really prove that, you know, the world was round? And we have so much in our history that is not cut and dry. It's a whole bunch of conspiracy theories. If we do like JFK, we could do that like a million different ways. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Nothing in our
That's shameful.
history is black and white. It's all mingled and melted, and it's up to us to make any sense in what we want to believe to suit
Well,
us.
I think that's such an important part of something that, like I was saying in the Vox chat, that dystopian novels never really predicted. That now facts are completely confused, and everyone's got a conspiracy theory. Everyone's an expert. Everyone thinks they know it all, and that's not been covered before because no one predicted that the internet would screw us up like that.
Yeah.
You know, but everyone is an expert, and that doesn't make for a government creating a dystopia. That makes for our confusion creating a dystopia because there's no reality anymore. That's just like your opinion.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You know?
we're inviting the dystopia.
Right.
We're saying the government's failing us, so let's make it ourselves.
Yeah, the government's failing to make a dystopia. Let's make one ourselves.
So another question from Fred Flo. How did you feel about the atmosphere in the book? Was it hard to keep reading it?
Yeah, my whole thought process the first time I read it is, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Because that is not how my mind thinks. And an interesting point is I talk about how he was rebelling. Winston was rebelling Big Brother, but there I was reading the book, rebelling the book, because my mind does not think that way. Although my mind was intrigued enough to continue on with that book. There are books where I was like, I am over it. I don't care how mainstream or trendy it is. I am over it. It's not my thing. But this was just dark enough to keep me intrigued and keep me in that book. I felt absolutely disgusting. Like I said, I needed a bath after I was done. I do not comply with someone telling me how it's going to be, how I have to think. But then I will coward enough to go ahead and give in because I'm not dumb enough to have injury inflicted upon me because of a belief. Is my belief going to be that important to me that I'm going to make my life harder, or am I going to comply? No, I'm going to comply. I didn't like the book at all. I still don't like the book, but in your Voxer, Greg, you had very enlightening. You shed light on that for me, and I stepped outside of my thought process and I went inside of yours, and I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. That was the intention of the book. And just like right now I'm reading Jaws, right? I know what the intention of that book is, and I am perfectly fine with that. But I was not perfectly fine with somebody telling me how I am to think and be and do. So,
Yeah.
Do you mean from the point of view of Big Brother telling you that, or from Winston telling you that?
just anybody in general. I want to think freely for myself. I want to have my own opinions. I don't want to live in a world where you can't even buy a diary. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what Orwell is trying to say is that
Yeah,
this
it's that serious and that controlling.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be offensive like that. You know, it's
Yeah.
supposed to offend you.
I mean,
your sense of.
you're absolutely supposed to think about that. It's like, how would we feel if we couldn't make BookTube videos anymore? That if there were people out there watching us saying these four people are saying things about the current state of politics that we don't agree with, so we're going to take them in and introduce them to room 101.
Mhm.
Would we if you heard about one BookTube happening to, I would say most of us would probably stop making videos. Right?
Yeah, the whole banning of a book. Who is to say what book should be banned? that is their thought, that is their belief. What we might not see that as a bad book at all. And we can even go as far as rock and roll, when they would smash all those records and throw them on that bonfire, you know, and this is the devil's music. That's just controlling. And, you know, I don't like that. I just think that whether you think it's right or wrong is an opinion, and you shouldn't manipulate your opinion into something that you think is fact and then bestow it upon us.
But that's where a large part of modern society wants to go.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole group, Moms for Liberty, I think is the name, who are very actively saying these books should be in or not in, and get rid of the rest. And it really is kind of scary, because they are gaining power, because they are the ones running for like school boards. Like,
I think that's why books like this are important, because there's enough people that would feel passionate that this matters, that our radar's up for it, and we would sort of rebel against that. If people didn't write those kind of books, we wouldn't be as kind of weaponized, if you like, against an authority trying to ban a bunch of books.
MJ,
you know what I mean?
You're going to be reading Flowers in the Attic in August, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to join in that. But that is like, that book is not banned, right?
No.
But my gosh, what do you think? Have any of you read that?
I read part of it, and I'm sorry, I just found it tedious and boring, and I stopped reading it because it just didn't interest me. And really, if people want to ban books, the way you do it is don't talk about them. You know, because the way to do it is like, let's say you wanted to ban the poetry book by Amanda Gorman something.
Yeah.
Instead of banning it, what you do is you get a different poetry book, and you talk about how good this book of poetry is. And
the trouble is, the people trying to ban something, they're missionaries, aren't they? They're not going to be happy with just not talking about something. They want other people not to talk about it. So they're missionaries. They're trying to inflict their opinion on someone else. That's the problem.
But my thing is, like, you deflect instead of attack. Trying to, like, because once you ban it, people want to actually kind of read it.
Yeah.
I know, because here in Virginia, when I moved here, the first year I moved it, we had a person running for the Republican governor, and he basically ran part of his campaign like, I'm going to make sure that high school students don't have to read Beloved by Toni Morrison. And so what I did, I'd read it before. It's like, I went out and reread it. That was my initial reaction, was I got to reread. And when someone banned Mouse, my thing is like, I should reread Mouse. You know, but if Mouse had not been banned, if Toni Morrison's book had not been disparaged, I probably would never have reread them, at least at this point in my life. So that's how I would do it. I mean, that's how I would do it. But
yeah.
Well, I mean, this is still studied in English education, so.
But
that's
does it work on teenagers?
It kind of worked for me. It was bleak and it was hard work, but it did. I never forgot it, and it did. It was probably one of the first things to politicize me, really. So there was a number of things. So by the time I got to 17 or 18, I got well into Brecht and stuff. But that was like, I was probably 13 or something, and that definitely did have an impact on my sense of politics. So yeah, I think it did affect me as a teenager.
I actually wish that I read this when I was a teenager, because reading this now, the recent political times, that's all that resonated me when I was going through the dialogue. And if I had read this back in the mid 80s, I wonder what if my opinion would have changed, if my reread experience would have changed. I wonder if I got more out of it now, having been a first-time reader of 1984, or if it would have been different if I would have read it 30 years ago.
I don't know. You might have thought about apartheid, maybe, if you were reading it then. I don't know.
Yeah.
How much.
I would think that it would be different because you are not that same person.
No, but I still have a lot of the same ideologies from back then that I have now. So I just wonder how I would have changed as a person, if at all.
Yeah, your references might be different.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think it would be different because back when I first read, as I said, the actual threat of the United States becoming authoritarian really wasn't on the horizon. I never thought of that as a serious thing that could happen. I mean, the worst that we had back then was Ronald Reagan, and people were kind of making jokes about that. But they make jokes about that every president. Oh, yeah, that president is not going to give up being president. He's going to make himself dictator. That happens almost every election. But it's only happened once that someone really did try it, So I think that way it was very illuminating that I did read the book differently, having experienced that. And students who read it for the first time now might be able to say, look, our country is at risk. And we could become like Oceania.
right.
And if we don't take action to keep things the way they are. And that's what's kind of scary.
Mm-hmm.
I know the second time I read it, it was after the Falklands War, and the Falklands War was the reason why Thatcher got her last term of office. And there was like massive patriotism during the Falklands War, and it was kind of created in this country to stir that up. And I think it really tapped into the perpetual war idea in the book, which I think is one of the cleverest things in the book. So there's a few really clever things in the book. Obviously, there's lots of clever things in the book, but I think one of the cleverest things, because I don't think I've read it in anything else, and I think it's so powerful an idea, is the idea that all the war was made up, and they just changed who they were at war with, and they just made the proles, who were the working class people, just kind of united by this hatred for whoever it was they were supposed to hate, and the sort of the people they were at war with. I thought that was so clever, because ultimately that is a fantastic way of uniting the working class.
Well, we see it now is like our country is so polarized, is that you have to hate the other people who are not part of your political group.
That something's got a lot worse recently. Yeah, definitely.
That you have your Emmanuel Goldsteins in the world, and you're supposed to have your 2 minutes of hate every day, and just say how bad that person is, and the thing is, that does work. People are sort of united by having an enemy. They can say, this person is my enemy. That if we just eliminate Goldstein and Goldsteinism, we'll be okay. Let me find some comments that might be relevant. Robert Harris's Fatherland was strongly influenced by 1984. I pointed out the similarities in my video comparing the book. I read Fatherland in the late 80s, I think, maybe early 90s. So
there's been a couple of adaptations of that as well.
Yeah.
What was it? Was it Robert Carlyle was in the last one, I think?
I've only read the book. And I'm skipping over people's hellos. Fred again. I'm very happy to read this again as an adult. I appreciated it so much more. It was still depressing and demoralizing, but this is one of those rare stories that stuck with me for a day or two. Yeah, I still think about it a lot. Even though I read it the end of last month. Now, part of it is, of course, we have the Voxer group going on throughout the month, so it's still in my mind, but
you can see parallels everywhere, and even if they're not exact parallels, we use the same language. They in this country we've got two programs, like light entertainment programs that are based on ideas from the book. So there's a awful reality TV thing called Big Brother, which is immensely popular. And the only link is the fact there's cameras everywhere. So it's like such a simplification. And then the other thing is our panel game thing called Room 101. And it's literally celebrities saying what they'd like to get rid of. What would they like to get rid of? It's like this, like a frivolous program. It's not rats eating your face, and it's just amazing that we've kind of watered down such like dark and bleak ideas from the book into these panel games, or that panel game and that reality TV show. So there's stuff everywhere that makes you, kind of brings you back to the book. Big Brother is watching you.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Yeah. DeSantis in Florida is creating his own brown shirts in Florida. Very scary. Yeah. Every time I think of Florida, I kind of wish that Bugs Bunny cartoon was true. Do you know the Bugs Bunny cartoon I'm talking about?
Go on, I've seen them all. Go on, which one?
This is where Bugs Bunny has been insulted during rabbit season, like $5 for a rabbit. And he goes, a rabbit's worth more. And the cartoon, he takes a hacksaw and saws off Florida from the continent. So it floats off into the Atlantic.
Another thing to mention, actually, we were talking about, because Flo was talking about the influence of Nazi Germany on Orwell. But remember, I don't know if you do know, but you probably do know, that during the 30s in Britain, Oswald Mosley was really popular. So we nearly had, like in Parliament in Britain, a fascist party, the British Union of Fascists. And that's really shocking, isn't it? But,
yeah.
The British are very, they love saying how liberal they always are. But in the 30s, the British Union of Fascists were genuinely really popular and could have been government, which is scary. Oswald Mosley was so popular.
Wow.
They were genuine fascists.
I think that's just the human condition. And we will probably have the people who tend to that direction through us as long as the species is alive.
Yes.
What?
Yeah. I used to be less cynical than I am now, but last, I don't know, 6 years, I've become a lot more cynical.
Lex is saying that, lots of cultures had slaves of different types. Very true. Iron Heel by Jack London. Nope, I have not read that one.
I keep looking for that. I can't find it anywhere. I keep looking for that. I've looked for it for about 2 years.
I have it on Kindle. It's in public domain. So if you read ebooks, it's free.
Yeah.
Brown. She's explained a bit about the brown shirts. I'll leave that so you read it because it's not entirely relevant.
Yeah, Mosley's followers were called black shirts. That's what reminded me. They were called the black shirts.
The Iron Heel, not well written, but it did predict World War I, the stock market crash, and descent into fascism. As react, okay.
World War One was crazy. The way World War One happened was so random. It was ridiculous. I don't know if you know how it happened, but it was just like loads and loads of consequences. Oh, well, if that's happened, that's going to happen. If that's happened, that's going to happen. It wasn't as clear as World War Two. It's completely mad, World War One.
Yeah, here's Alan saying Greg will catch up with the comments. Yeah, I'm trying. And I know I'm skipping some comment. It's nothing personal when I'm skipping comments.
You got your favorites, Greg, haven't you?
I'm trying to keep the discussion flowing and keeping it on 1984. I guess Alan here is mentioning that in 1904, sex was for procreation only.
Yeah.
That was one of their edicts, that it was like the woman's duty. I know that was Winston's first wife, who wanted the child, but didn't want to have to do what was necessary to get there.
And George Orwell had 2 other girlfriends, didn't he, besides his wife? So
I have
he
no
didn't.
idea about George Orwell's sex life in real life.
That definitely wasn't George Orwell's idea.
Course of Miracles. Yeah, I think they're getting a little off topic. Hello, Courtney. Hello, Aaron. No, Gareth. The BUF wasn't popular. It had a membership of 80,000. At the same time, the Communist and Labor Conservative parties were each have the party membership over 1 million.
But the communists were popular as well. He is right. The communists were very popular as well.
All right. Okay, we're at the end of comments.
I think what I was trying to say, just answering Aaron's point, what I was trying to say was it was shocking how popular they were. You know, that they were popular. They weren't necessarily, destined for having like the Prime Minister, Mosley being Prime Minister, but they were popular, definitely. Same as communists were.
Yeah, well,
The 30s was a decade of extremes, definitely.
Yeah, we're going through our own extremist period right now. So,
well, it's got this weird pluralism. I think it's such a strange time where nobody believes anything and everyone believes themselves. You can't debate anymore. You know, I think that's what makes today weird.
So here's a comment. I think, Gareth, you've touched on this. The 30s were very scary. All 3 major ideologies are battling for the history of mankind. Orwell certainly influenced by the Spanish Civil War in writing 1984.
There were 3 dictatorships in Europe in the 30s. That's shocking, isn't it?
Well, how many dictatorships do we have right now?
I don't know.
North Korea, I would say, is a dictatorship. Erdogan in Turkey, I guess technically he got voted in. Maybe not a dictatorship, kind of. Putin is definitely a dictator. So at least 2, maybe 3. I guess. I don't know. Okay, well, so what else do we have to say about the book?
I think it's interesting that you wrote that after Animal Farm, because Animal Farm
was Animal Farm first?
Yeah. This was his last book, 1984.
Okay.
He died about 6 months later, actually. So it wasn't just his last book, but he died really soon after. So he didn't know that it was as popular as it was, which is a real shame. Yeah. Animal Farm is so different, and it's such a different approach to tackle a similar subject.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obviously more specific because he's literally, Napoleon is Stalin, and Old Major is either Marx or Lenin, but probably Marx. And Trotsky's Snowball. I think it's Snowball. He's very specific about the allegory he's created. So it's definite allegory, whereas this isn't specific. It's just watch out, people, because we could do this to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
I think that's interesting.
I think what's interesting is if they say that procreation in the 30s was emphasized, why is Julia looking for it? Why? Typically, a man would. Now, I'm not saying that a woman wouldn't, but it's just typical that a man would. So why did Julia initiate that? What's the message there?
I think she's there as a female rebel. I think he was trying to say that male and female people were wanted to
Well,
go
but the
against
whole
the state.
passing of the note, the "I love you," when
Yeah, that's the way of getting his attention,
yeah,
because she wanted to rebel against the state.
yeah, but what a way.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. But that is the way to do it. In a to the core of who you are, isn't it? Rather than just shouting something. To
Yeah,
do that is proper rebellion, isn't it? In 1984's world.
yeah, extremely dangerous. And then for him to go into the shop where he bought the diary and try to set something up with the clerk there. As far as Winston and Julia would, as a meeting place, a safe place. Don't you think that's awfully trusting, knowing the danger?
Yeah, that did strike me because in the beginning, like their first encounter, they go to this field out in the country.
Yeah,
we can go here twice, but that's all that we can risk.
Right.
And it's Winston who sort of says, no, let's get something a little more established and not have to do all these. I take this bus and you take that bus and different times, but they still knew about it. They still knew about their secret meetings because they were watching everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So Gareth, here's a question. I don't know if you can see the comments from Fred. Gareth, what did it feel like reading 1984, knowing that the events take place in London? Did you walk the streets and think, wow, what would those streets be like if we lived like Winston did?
I tell you what, I didn't relate it to England so much because I think it's such the kind of setting is so vague, if you like. It doesn't feel like London. But I did feel like that when I read V for Vendetta. V for Vendetta is like Alan Moore's kind of update of it, if you like. And he's obviously V's a vigilante trying to take down the state. And I did feel like that was really English, and I felt like the setting of it was kind of reminiscing in the street. So I remember when I read that, it felt really vivid. But for me, 1984 doesn't feel very English. It feels very parallel worldy. Could be anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, everything's named differently anyway.
Yeah.
But you brought out something about like dystopian novels in general. Is like nowadays when someone writes a dystopian novel, it's not like 1984. They usually have typically a teenager who's fighting against the evil and will bring down the corrupt government. But that part seems very false to me in those dystopians where you have the hero is going to bring down the government. That I think George Orwell had it better. It's like you will eventually capitulate like Winston. Or do you think you can truly have the rebels overthrow the government?
Well, I don't know if this is slightly off topic, but it was one of the amazing things that happened in Andor, the series.
I don't know the series.
So it's the one of the Star Wars series, and one of the amazing things that they depicted, and it was so stirring and so powerful, and your heart was going crazy when there was an actual rebellion of a situation that was really repressive, really uncomfortable to watch sometimes. And the release of this particular episode, spoilers, when they get out and they rebel and they get out and they succeed in getting out of that prison, basically, is an amazing thing. So it doesn't happen very often. It happened in V as well. V for Vendetta happened, and when they filmed it, they managed to film it the same way as well. So the ending is just as anarchic, if you like, anarchistic as the original graphic novel. Happens sometimes, but most of the time, you don't get. Certainly in the better written dystopians, they don't normally succeed. I think in Hunger Games she does, doesn't she?
I never got that book.
Yeah.
I haven't read Hunger Games. Yeah, she does succeed by the end of that, didn't she? I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's probably started the whole thing with the YA end of it as well, isn't it? Go on, Jane.
honestly think one of the reasons why I enjoyed this book so much is by how the book ended. Like, I was rooting for Winston the whole time. I didn't want the ending to happen the way that it did, but when it did, it just, I wouldn't say it was a perfect ending, but it sat with me differently. Does that make sense?
The ending made sense.
Yeah, I mean, for Winston to succumb to Big Brother, it was perfection in my book. You know, how it would have ended. I don't see Winston as being the one to, start the revolution, to, take down Big Brother or anything like that, because I think when was this published? What year?
49.
48
Okay.
and 49.
Oh, sorry, it was written in 48, but published in 49, right?
So to have that dark despair, that realization that, everyone isn't always going to get the ending that they want. Everyone isn't always going to win in the end. I think that's what I liked about the book so much.
I think it was also localized to those two characters as well. So there wasn't a sense that there was a revolution happening. There was a slight, it was kind of implied, but it wasn't like a movement that was happening.
Right.
And that is the case in the book that inspired him. So I don't know if you've read
No.
by Zamyatin. So that's the Russian book that was written before 1984 that Orwell read. And that is about a character who is, as far he just understands that this is the reality, this is the way that we should live. And then this woman kind of says, actually, we shouldn't live like this, and kind of persuades him to get involved with the rebels.
Mm-hmm.
So that is much more of a rebellion that's happening.
Yeah.
It still doesn't go very well, but you do get that sense that that's a movement, whereas with this, it's two people that are dissatisfied with the situation, and feel very repressed.
Keep that. There's a comment down here that I'm trying to see is it relevant? Where Aaron is going, the Spanish Civil War was what finally soured Orwell on communism in the USSR, which is why both Animal Farm and 1984 draw heavily from the USSR. Okay, I don't know a whole lot about Orwell's in the Spanish Civil War. So
he fought with the communists against the Spanish regime.
So is it the fact that they lost, or that he felt that they were committing atrocities that they shouldn't have?
I think because this could be a whole big old debate, and this could get very complicated. But I think he separated what was happening in Russia with Stalin from his own sense of democratic socialism, because he was a socialist, and he was always a socialist till he died. But obviously, the Soviet Union, what happened with Stalin particularly, was a kind of a mutation of that, and it was basically a dictatorship. So he saw that was like where that could go. So was definitely more of a democratic socialist than a state socialist or whatever. Because in his early days, he was much more extreme. He was much more of a communist.
Well, a lot of authors of his age were communists in their youth. I mean, it was fairly typical. And most of them outgrew it, like Orwell and, like I said earlier, Richard Wright. So here is William Waiting Sinclair Lewis's It Can't Happen Here is a vivid description of social anxieties. And actually that's a pretty decent book that I've been meaning to reread for a while.
Don't know.
No, that's the one that described a fascist takeover of the United States, and it was written just before World War II.
Okay.
Does anyone think that Orwell was influenced in his political beliefs in the fascist leanings post-abdication of Edward VIII? I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that one.
Yeah.
I've never seen those two things linked, to be honest. So
Yeah, I'm just not knowledgeable enough on history to make a comment.
but he abdicated because he was having an affair, didn't he?
Yeah, for missing something.
I forgot their name, but that's why he abdicated.
Whilst 1984 is specifically analogous to the USSR, the descriptions of everything falling apart, the 5-year plan, and the endless propaganda broadcast is directly drawn from the USSR. Okay, I mean, I definitely got the USSR vibe throughout 1984. But that's just me.
I think, yeah, you can't deny it's an influence, definitely. But I think it's a bit. It diminishes it a bit if you just say it's an attack on USSR. I think Animal Farm is, but I think this was deliberately written in a wider setting. There's so much of this that goes beyond Soviet Union.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't have thought police in Soviet Union.
No, I mean that was an invention of Orwell, but it's the vibe that I got. Now, part of it may have been just the culture I was growing up in. It was the 80s, and we were all taught about the Soviet Union and the evils of the communist regime. So that has influence too.
Yeah, I think Americans might feel differently about it than British people. We haven't had that kind of propaganda.
Yeah, you didn't have Ronald Reagan talking about the evil empire, and
no, we had Thatcher going on about the evil of socialists, but not in the same way that Americans do.
here's Fred. To each of you, what is one word you would use to describe 1984 and why? Does anyone want to take a stab at that? I'll go.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say thought-provoking because it's a novel. You don't really read it for character. You read it to get your brain juices flowing and saying, how does this apply today? How did it apply back then? And it's just food for thought. And that's probably why I return to it a lot over the years, is that you can always find something new in that book.
Yeah. I'm going to say compelling, because as I was going through this book, there were moments where I was relating it to recent events, and just the way that some of the language was revealed, with war is peace, and just all of the double speak. I really, really was, I don't know what you want to say. I was engrossed in the book, and I had to finish it. I knew that the ending probably wasn't going to be the ending that I wanted, but I was compelled just to stick with it. So I'm going to say compelling.
I'm going to say multifaceted, because I think the difference between this and all the other dystopian books I've read is that they tend to focus on one or two things. And there are so many layers to this, so many areas of oppression, and so many ways that the government is controlling the people, that I think it makes it unique.
I'm going to say disgusting, because it all comes down to power and how individuals just love to embody that word. Power is a powerful word, and it means so much to so many people. And then when you get a group of people together who value power, it is a hot mess. I find it disgusting. I found the book, every single page of this book, disgusting, irritating. And yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Disgusting. It all boils down to power.
I mean, we see it so much today about no one. I mean, it's just so important to be in charge, to be the one
Mhm.
making the decision.
Mhm.
And again, I'm going to go back to Florida. Is that they are those people who are wanting to make the decisions for everyone. They're saying, this is how you teach this subject. This is what you cannot say. This is everything. Like they want to be the ones that rule people. And again, that's what I think makes that novel very powerful. Is that the people who are trying to make that happen today existed back then. We have not progressed. We still have them. And I said, we're always going to have them.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think what just bouncing off Flo's point, what stops me from feeling the same way as Flo is that George Orwell didn't agree with the book. If this was his version of Mein Kampf, then I'd find it disgusting as well. But because it was a protest, then obviously I feel differently about it. But yeah, if this was a manifesto, then I'd be like, no, that's a disgusting book.
Yeah, well, that's very true. It's like he says, you do not want this to happen.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So that's
Yeah.
why he was making it so disgusting. He said,
it's not a celebration of
no,
dictatorship.
it's not. This is not a
Yeah.
how-to manual. This is like, don't do this. Don't go down that road.
Yeah,
This is how miserable you will be
yeah.
if you allow these type of people to take power. And then
And there's a lot of misery in it. It's not a very
Yeah.
happy book.
Mm-mm.
So, do you think there was a rebellion? I mean, Winston and Julia were told there was an underground rebellion, that Emmanuel Goldstein was real. Because
I
that's one of
think
the questions
it's
Winston asked.
implied, but it doesn't look like it's got any momentum in it. It seems to be that it's there. I think if there was more presence in 1984 society of the rebellion, they would have joined the rebellion. But I think because it seems to be not quite gaining ground, it's not really started. I don't think, but there's a sense that it's there.
Right.
I
I think I honestly think that for two people to have a similar ideology regarding what's going on can't be isolated. There has to be one or two or a few others, but they just haven't had the connection yet. So I think in reading the book that there's something that hasn't been revealed yet, that yes, there is a momentum that is gaining ground, but we don't see it in the book.
Possibly. Now, the thing is, O'Brien said in one question, yes, there is Emmanuel Goldstein, but another one, he said he wrote Emmanuel Goldstein's book. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm almost thinking is that O'Brien wrote the Goldstein manual as a way to lure out people who had these thoughts that are similar, like Julia and Winston. And he says, if we can just lure them out into believing that there is a rebellion, then we can get them to Room 101 and get them on our side.
Mm-hmm.
But the point that there is a Room 101 and the point that they have fabricated Goldstein to get those people snuffed out implies that there are people that are doing that.
But are they organized? Do they really know each other? Or are they just ships in the night?
That's what I'm saying. They're not organized. They're not connecting, like MJ's saying. I think there's people there, but they haven't got to that point.
Right.
So it's not a proper rebellion.
Well, that's
not proper rebellion.
I don't think it's a proper rebellion in that society. I think it's
rumblings.
We'll get there eventually.
Maybe so.
Human spirit and all that. Oh look, I'm not as cynical as I thought. I just said human spirit and all that.
That's
right. Nice. There you go.
Here's Aaron. What soured him was that he saw the Soviets turn the Spanish Republican government into a puppet and carry out bloody purges of the non-pro-Soviet parts of the Republican side. This helped Franco win. Okay. So he basically saw his side as being corrupt, I guess.
Yeah, he saw the negative side of what was happening in Russia, definitely, yeah. No, he said it perfectly, yeah.
This is a really excellent use of time. Cup of coffee and Orwell. What is on tap so I can join the read along? Well, we're at an hour and 20 minutes. So
Can I just mention something?
sure.
Because for years and years and years, it was my favorite. As what I used to say was my favorite film. And Terry Gilliam did his own take on 1984, didn't he?
Brazil.
Mm.
It's a good movie.
It's such an amazing film, and there's
It is.
there's modern references to it, like the crazy plastic surgery where that woman just keeps getting worse and worse, and the way that it's all about the plumbing system, in it, that they got these
Mhm.
they got the central services that come round, and you got like sort of what are they, kind of anarchistic plumbers going around trying to do the work better because the central services are going to screw it up. But all those different images that are in the streets, that are kind of like the war is peace kind of slogan and stuff like that. And what happens when he eventually does get picked up by Michael Palin's character, and he's tortured and all that. It's just fantastic way that Gilliam kind of reinvented it, I think. I love Brazil.
I have not watched it in a number. I really should pick it up again. So
Yeah, watch it tomorrow. Watch it tomorrow, Greg.
I'll see. I have an event in the evening that I have to go to, a dinner with some neighbors. It's going to be an Elvis impersonator and a picnic. So
You can't miss an Elvis impersonator. Okay, fair enough. Watch it in the afternoon, and then
All
go
right.
see your Elvis impersonator.
Here's the question: is that I actually was talking to Nettie, who had done recently her 5 favorite dystopian novels, and she held up 1984. And we invited her, but it's the middle of the night, and she has to work in the morning. So I told her, let's do another dystopian. Gareth, you're unique.
Yes.
You're your own person. So I told Nettie we should do another dystopian novel later in the year, early next year. So, and I actually think this read a month and then do a live at the end would be a great idea.
It might be good to do a bunch of them, like get everyone reading sort of 3 or 4 different dystopian novels, and then we can compare them and do all that sort of stuff.
I might be too wild and crazy, but here's an idea. I'm just going to throw out.
I haven't drank anything yet.
I don't know. She mentioned Fahrenheit 451, which I've read, which is great. It Can't Happen Here by Sinclair Lewis, which was mentioned earlier by Williams Library, is another good one. The Iron Heel by Jack London, or maybe Brave New Worlds. I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas.
Brave New World's a good one because because the people are completely complicit and actually want it. So Brave New World's kind of interesting take on it.
Oh, maybe so. Okay, I know that's one that Nettie has not read yet. So we'll banter around the ideas, maybe in our 84 group, if we want to do another one later on in the year. Let's finish it. No, I don't think there was a rebel faction in 1984. I think the state made it up to further its control over people. The one word I would use for 1984 is futile. Yeah. It's all been great. And Alan, we got to get you Wi-Fi. Thanks so much for the live event. It was great to talk about this novel. Great discussion. Thanks for participating. And thanks, Fred, for everything. Enjoyed your 1984 vid. Oh, one more. Huxley once said he thought the world of 1984 could have eventually developed into the world of Brave New World.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's have some final comments if we have any. And what a night.
Aaron's made some great contributions tonight. Aaron.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think there was a lot of great comments in there. Sorry if I did not read everyone's hellos, but we're trying to keep it focused. So, any last comment? I know you found it disgusting, Flo. Would you read another classic dystopian novel with us?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
How about you, MJ?
We need to find a dystopian comedy. That's what we need to find.
Ooh.
Dystopian comedy.
Is it a dystopian comedy? The Trial? That's not very funny.
No. But
Brilliant.
Paul Kafka laughed when he read that book aloud to his friends. He found
It's
it.
very Kafka-esque.
All right. Okay. Well, then let's call it a night. I think it was a really good discussion. I hope maybe in the future, maybe someone who needs to write a paper on 1984 will watch our video instead.
And walk away enlightened.
Well, I think we had some good comments in here. Okay.
Well, thanks for because a lot of this was down to Bad is Rad, wasn't it? And
It
you
was.
and Alan. So
Bad-
thanks for getting us involved in this and
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
getting us reading
That's how
it
it
together.
started. Alan and
It was
Bad.
awesome.
I think Bad is Rad found a copy of 1984 that she bought. She liked the cover. It was cool. I said, I should read this someday. And Alan said, I'll buddy read with you. And I joined in and said, well, if you're buddy reading it, I'll join in. And then we just opened it up and it became this really fun event. Very illuminating.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everyone. I will catch you all later somewhere. So everyone, have a good night wherever you are. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.